Hey guys, today I will be reading a one-shot fic, Heroes About, by ASharksReadingGlasses. I will add that this fic is part 1 of a series. Anyway, further information will be in the description. The only good thing about this trip, Danny muses as he flew invisibly towards Central Park in the New York skyline, is the sightseeing. When Danny's parents had casually mentioned that the whole family would be going on a cross-country trip to visit a family friend in New York City during the summer break, Danny almost had a fit. The last road trip had nearly killed his parents, and he had earned a fair amount of bumps, bruises, and ectoplasm burns. Danny tried to weasel out of it by arguing that he had plans with Sam and Tucker, but his parents had stated that he was too young to be by himself for that long. Angry about the remark, Danny had told them that it wasn't fair that they sprung this on him and his sister without prior warning. And surprisingly, Jazz took his side. Their parents had hesitated, but eventually agreed after a fair amount of wheedling, and said that they would allow them any and all free time they wanted when they hit New York. After breaking the news to Sam and Tucker, all three of them had sulked over to Nasty Burger to drown their woes in grease. Tucker had predictably bounced back after a few bites of his burger and had adamantly gave him tourist activities he could do in New York. Dude, Tucker had stated while sipping his drink, think about it. No parents, free reign in New York City. You'll have an awesome time. Doing what? Danny gripped, drowning his fries in ketchup. Going to a museum without you guys would be boring, and wandering around New York sounds like asking for trouble. I never said you had to enjoy the sights as a human, Tucker said smugly, puffing his chest. Danny paused and looked up from his French fry massacre. You want Danny to go sightseeing in New York as a ghost? Sam clarified, taking a long sip from her smoothie. Did your brain overheat in your beret? Danny snorted and Tucker gasped indignantly. Come on, guys, it's a great idea. Danny, you're always telling us how amazing Amity looks. Amity looks from the sky. Think about how awesome New York would look. And if anyone messes with you, they're toast. Tucker pauses to take another bite of his burger and then grinned slyly. Besides, maybe you'll meet another hero. Have to admit it took, Danny thought while floating in the air and watching an aerobatic ring performance. This was pretty cool. After haunting Central Park for nearly 3 hours, Danny could finally confess that it was having fun. It was just so interesting to be able to be a ghost during daytime without having to worry about destruction, doom, and boxes, and just be able to enjoy the sights like everyone else. In Amity, he was usually active during the night, when most people were asleep and streets were quiet. But right now in the afternoon, New York was teeming with people. Before this, Danny would never have considered himself a people-watching person, but here he couldn't stop. New York City was just so active, like the city itself was alive in a way that Amity wasn't. Maybe that was because Amity Park was a ghost town. Although Danny thought as he spotted someone with purple and yellow mohawk just casually going on an afternoon jog, that might be just because of the people. New York must just breed and attract a certain type of colourful people like Amity bred and attracted certain types of obsessive ghosts. Danny followed the jogger with his eyes before they rounded a corner and his attention went to a dog walker on a skateboard, attached to an obscene amount of dogs. Danny zipped so he was overhead and watching as the doggy horde seamlessly weaved in between the throngs of people before he spotted a public bathroom. He went intangible and discreetly checked it was empty before turning human and going back out into the park, following his nose to a hot dog stand and getting something to eat. He continued wandering around, taking videos of performances and tipping performers as he went. Danny spent an hour and a half wandering around before figuring he should start making his way back to his hotel his family was staying at. He found another bathroom to go ghost and leisurely floated invisibly around two-story high building. Found another bathroom to go ghost and leisurely floated invisible about 2 stories high between buildings, stopping every once in a while to observe graffiti tags and murals. Just as he was about to call it quits and actually make his way to the hotel, he spotted an opening between buildings that would be a perfect shot for a New York City skyline. He darted higher into the sky, legs merging together into his ghost tail as he circled around when something red caught his eye, and he slowed. When he got a good look at what caught his attention, Danny's jaw dropped. No way, Danny thought as he stared. Is that Spider-Man? Oh my god, it is! Danny slowed, circling around the spider-themed hero, who was balancing on top of a flat pole like a sentient gargoyle. Unable to help himself from getting a closer look, Danny flipped himself over so he was floating upside down in front of the hero. Far enough that Spider-Man wouldn't hit him if he had to start swinging. He curled it up into a ball of excitement and squished his cheeks together in untamable glee. Danny knew that Tucker had been semi-serious when he joked about meeting another hero. New York was infamously full of them. Luke Cage in Harlem, Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen, Iron Fist in Chinatown, Spider-Man in Queens, not to mention Iron Man. But to actually meet one, with childlike wonder, Danny leaned in closer to look at the reflective lenses on the mask when Spider-Man jerked back. Startled, Danny jolted back as well before the hero spoke. "Hey, who's up here?" Spider-Man asked as the lenses on his mask narrowed in horizontal slits. He paused, then asked, incredulously, "And how are you up here?" Danny smiled in delight as he realized the other superhero could sense him. He leaned his head on his hands and he orientated himself so he's floating on his stomach and mischievously circled around the hero, watching as the other looked around for him. The lenses on his mask opened like the retinal on a camera. "Seriously," Spider-Man grumbled in the opposite direction, after a few more minutes of Danny playing hot and cold around him. "Where and how?" Danny sat up so he was sitting crisscross in the air with his hands in his lap, and let out a tiny chuckle. Spider-Man whipped his head around so he was staring at Danny. Danny thought briefly that what he was about to do was a bad idea, but decided to do it anyway. After all, Danny thought, I can't meet my hero if I'm invisible. Playing it safe, Danny turned intangible before becoming visible, his body becoming pale green, slightly see-through. Hoping he didn't start the other hero too badly, Spider-Man predictably twitched back in surprise before leaning in with interest. "Huh," Spider-Man said. "You don't see that every day." Danny lifted one of his hands out of his lap and rubbed the back of his head in a shy embarrassment, but he couldn't keep the grin off his face. "Sorry for bugging you," Danny apologized. "Not many people notice me." Spider-Man continued to look at him, then glanced back down to the street, then back to him. "Dude, how are you doing that?" Spider-Man asked, waving his hand underneath where Danny was floating. I'm kinda a ghost," Danny chuckled, putting his hands back into his lap. Drifting closer to the hero as Spider-Man's lenses widened. "That's like our thing." "Kinda? How can you be kinda a ghost?" Spider-Man asked, straightening up from his hunched position. Well," Danny gulped nervously. "It's, sorta complicated." Danny expected to get scolded for evading the question, but Spider-Man just laughed. "Yeah, I bet," he said, lifting the bottom of his mask up so his mouth was showing. "Are you a new hero in New York? What's your name?" "New hero in..." Danny asked and then backpedaled. "Oh, no. I am sort of a local hero where I'm from, but my parents are just visiting family friends. I'm just killing time right now, and, Danny. My name is Danny Phantom." "Awesome," Spider-Man smiled. "What have you done in New York so far? Have you visited any of the museums?" "Oh," Danny stuttered. He wasn't expecting Spider-Man to be so friendly. "I just hung out at Central Park all day so far. People watching, you know." Spider-Man nodded. "It's a good place to start. I totally recommend the Natural History Museum. I think they're having a limited space exhibit this week," Spider-Man commented, pushing his mask down, sliding his feet off the top of the pole to somehow stick to the side, leaning his body weight out while one hand adheres to the pole like glue and the other hanging limply. Thanks," Danny replied, watching in awe. Spider-Man smiled again, his lens squinting like he was beaming. "Sweet. Hey, hope you don't mind, but I have to get back to patrol." "Hope you enjoy your stay," Spider-Man said as he raised his arm in the air and started to aim. Danny startled. "Hey, wait," Danny said as he zipped forward, his legs transforming into a tail. Spider-Man paused and lowered his hands. Yeah? What's up?" Spider-Man asked nervously. Danny gulped and tried to get his thoughts in order. "It's just..." Danny started, his tail curling as nervously... "It's just..." Danny started, his tail curling as he nervously wrung it in his hands. When I got these powers, I had a hard time controlling it, you know? And I had no idea what to do with them. But then, a couple of months after I became like this, you started to get recognized and made a name for yourself, and it inspired me. And I wanted to ask, how do I get better? How do I get people to start looking at me like a hero and not a monster? I just wanted to ask." Danny paused. "Could I get a picture?" Spider-Man paused, then shifted like he was making room. "Sure, dude, bring it in," Spider-Man says he raises his hands in a peace sign. Danny smiled faintly as he got his phone from a pocket in his jumpsuit and held it up with his tail as he got into position. By the time Danny had gotten back to the hotel, he was sneaking intangible and invisible through the window, hoping his parents were still busy. Jazz was reading a book on the bed, and his parents weren't in sight. He became visible and tangible, turning off his powers. before face planting into the other bed. Jazz threw her book up in startled surprise before grabbing a pillow and whacking him on the back. "Darn it, Danny! Don't do that!" Jazz says as she resettled herself. Danny huffed out less than enthused. "Sure," before throwing the pillow back at her. Jazz frowned at him. "Are you still upset that you couldn't spend the summer break with Sam and Tucker?" she asked. Danny shrugged. I don't want to talk about it." Danny moped into the pillow as he flipped the hood of his hoodie he was wearing today over his face. Danny," Jazz said, "you have a sticky note stuck to your back." Danny flipped his hood off and reached his arm around his back, groping for the said note. Sure enough, a note was on his back, covered by his hood. He pulled it off with a little bit more difficulty than he expected and flipped over onto his back to inspect the note. It was folded in half with his hero name on the front and a sticky, stringy substance on the other side. Danny immediately sat up in attention and unfolded the note. "Hey Danny, you seemed kinda down before I left. Sorry I couldn't stay long." Sad face. "We should hang out a little bit before you leave. I'll show you some of my favorite people watching spots. Shoot me a text whenever you have some time. Your friendly neighborhood spider man." "Danny? Anything wrong?" Jazz asked. Danny carefully refolded the note and stuck it into his pocket for safekeeping, smiling at her as he faced her. "Nah," he said, leaning back onto his bed in content. "I think I just made a new friend." Hey guys, yes, sadly, this is the end of today's one-shot fic. As always, information will be in the description. Hope to see you again sometime soon. Bye!